The Empire Strikes Back was released May 21st, 1980, and just like the last movie, it stars Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, Harrison Ford, David Prowse, Kenny Baker, Anthony Daniels, James Earl Jones and Alec Guinness. Now, if you follow my channel, you know that my last video was the original Star Wars, also known as A New Hope, and I posted that about 4 weeks ago. And recently I found out that The Force Awakens is coming out on DVD and Blu-ray on April 18th in the UK, and I remember saying that I wanted to review all the Star Wars movies until that was released, and so I realised, oh crap, Force Awakens coming out on Blu-ray next month, so I need to get out some Star Wars reviews, so here I am. Now, I know a lot of people call this movie different names. Some people call it just The Empire Strikes Back, some people call it Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back, some people call it Star Wars Episode 5, some people call it Star Wars Episode 5 The Empire Strikes Back, like the longest title. I personally just call it Empire Strikes Back, but I'll be calling the video Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back to differentiate, just like in my last review. Now, just like with A New Hope, I just watched the original VHS with no special edition changes whatsoever. So when I'm reviewing this movie, I won't be talking about the special edition changes because I'll just be reviewing the original movie that came out in 1980. Now, I don't really know much about the hype for this movie because obviously I wasn't around when it came out, but what I do know is that people were joining Star Wars fan clubs and like reading a bunch of magazines to see if they can get any information on this movie, and when it came out, did it live up to everyone's expectations? Well, I think so, because this just improved everything upon the original Star Wars when it comes to acting, cinematography, the action, character development, added some more characters, the scope, the stakes were higher. This movie took everything that was awesome about A New Hope and just took it to a new level, and it actually rectified everything I didn't like in the original Star Wars, which I love the original Star Wars, but like some of the things I didn't like in there was like I said before, the lack of subplots. Like it was just like one long plot, there weren't any subplots, and you didn't see Luke use the Force or use a lightsaber in that movie very much, but we get that in this, so that was great. I also think this movie is more original than A New Hope, because I haven't seen any movie that's like got a story like this, but with A New Hope it was based on Joseph Campbell's A Hero of a Thousand Faces, and just really like that kind of cliche storyline. But this is just completely new. Everything here is just so fresh and original, which is so awesome. And I say the acting's better in this one because in the last one the actors didn't really understand their characters, so I think after the period of time after A New Hope, by the time they got to filming Empire Strikes Back, they really got to know their characters more, so they could play them better, which I think really benefited this film. Now, in my eyes, this is the definition of a perfect movie sequel. It's darker, it introduced some new characters, it expanded on the universe, it gave me everything I wanted from the original movie, like Han and Leia getting together, Luke learning more about the Force and using a lightsaber, the Empire finding the Rebel base, and the confrontation between Luke and Vader. It gave me all of that, and it did it perfectly. Now, another way in which I think this is like a great movie sequel is that in a typical trilogy, in the first movie you get introduced to all the characters, which is what happened, and in the second movie they're put in the worst situation they possibly can be in, and in the third one they get out of that situation, and in The Empire Strikes Back they do that perfectly, because seriously, our heroes are screwed in every single situation they're in, but in the Empire find the Rebel base, they fight, they lose, they escape, but Han and Leia get kidnapped by the Empire. Luke just training on Dagobah, but he disobeys Yoda's orders, go to fight Darth Vader, and he's screwed. He gets beaten, and he almost dies. Like he barely escapes with his life. Like you see him go into the Millennium Falcon, and he is seriously scarred mentally and physically. And at the end of the movie, it's a complete cliffhanger because there's so many questions that are posed. And everyone's like, what? Because there was no satisfying ending really, which is a good thing because it will all be alright in the third movie. But that's what's so great about this movie, is that it's not like the typical like fun action adventure movie, because our heroes, they lost. And you don't really see that much in a movie, but in the movie sequel as great as this, you do get that. Now, since we're talking about our characters, let's talk about our main protagonist, Luke. Now, Luke goes through a massive character arc in this movie. He starts off on Hoth. He's part of the rebellion now, which is cool. He gets kidnapped by the Tauntaun, he gets scarred. He fights in the Battle of Hoth, which is also awesome. He gets a message from Obi-Wan to tell him to go to the Dagobah system, so he goes there and he gets trained by Yoda, which is awesome. But when he first meets Yoda, he doesn't think anything of him. He just thinks that he's just this weird creature who he's going to have to stand until he finds Yoda, but then he realizes he is Yoda, so it really like opens his eyes to everything, like not everything is as you seem, not everything is as it seems, like thing. So he trains with Yoda, and but he gets a vision of Han and Leia being tortured, so he leaves his training early to go fight Vader. He fights him and we get the best duel in the whole saga, but I'll get into that later. And he loses, gets his hand chopped off, and then Vader gives him the big reveal, which I'll talk about later. So at the end of the movie, he's scarred physically and mentally, and we could tell that he's matured at the beginning of the movie, but by the end of this movie, he is a much more grown-up character because of all the crap he went through during this film. Now we've finished talking about our main protagonist, now let's talk about our main antagonist, Darth Vader. Oh my gosh, he is so great in this movie. In this movie, he really feels like he's top dog, because in the first movie, he felt like he was a bit restrained because he was always taking orders from Grand Moff Tarkin, so we didn't really see him do much, and in the first Star Wars movie, he kind of felt more of a right-hand man than like the Supreme Overlord, but now Grand Moff Tarkin is dead, he can just do whatever the hell he wants, and he's having a blast. He is killing his generals left and right, he doesn't even care. And in this movie we get to see the back of his head for the first time, and I just love how he's so chilled about it. That's the cool thing about Vader as well. In this movie he just seems so confident and methodical, which just makes for a great villain. And also I'd like to mention that all the starships in this movie have blue lights coming out of them, but Vader's personal starship has red lights coming out of him. And I think that's cool because it's just little things like that that like tell you different things without showing it. So yeah, Vader in this movie was so much better than he was in A New Hope. He was still great in A New Hope, but in this movie he really got to shine. And I think another awesome Vader moment in this film is when Han and Leia meet Lando Calrissian. They see that Vader set a trap for them, and then Han tries to shoot him straight away. Which kind of annoys me, because in A New Hope, George Lucas changed it so that Greedo shot first, but in this one, Han shot first. As soon as he saw Darth Vader, he just saw Darth Vader, and he's like, oh shit, Vader, I'm going to kill him. Straight away, Vader didn't even do anything, but that's just Han's character. So George, come on, if you're going to like try and ruin the original trilogy, at least be consistent. And then Vader catches Han's gun, and he says, we'll be honoured if you would join us. And I always thought, what did they talk about? I think, I've seen some parodies of it that were pretty funny, but I kind of think that when they went into the room, they just went straight into another room, because I can't really imagine them sitting around having dinner or something, but if they did, I imagine it'd be really, really awkward. But yeah, something I always wondered, I just want George Lucas to say in an interview what happened during that dinner, because I well, it might not have even been dinner, but I'd imagine it would be. And it wasn't just Vader who gets improved in this movie, it's the whole Empire. I mean, we see some more ships, we see some more droids, we see the Emperor for the first time, and actually when this movie was first released, there's actually a woman with monkey eyes superimposed over her. It looked a bit weird, but it looked pretty good considering. I mean, they've changed it now to Ian McKellen, but at the time it didn't look too bad. And also we get introduced to the Imperial March, one of the most iconic pieces of music in film history. I've heard this movie hundreds of times and it's still not enough. It's perfect music for the Empire. Cause and it kind of annoys me when people say this is Darth Vader's theme when it's not, it's the Empire's theme. But I think it's kind of a bad thing in a way, because I think the Imperial scenes get a bit repetitive in this movie, because it goes like, you see the heroes, then you hear the Imperial March, then a scene on a ship, then it goes back to heroes, then you hear the Imperial theme again, and I love the Imperial March to bits, but I think they overuse it in this movie a bit, and no one mentions that, and it is kind of a nitpick, but that's just something that kind of irritated me in this movie. I just think they overused the song. And I also think it was good when Han and Leia get kidnapped by the Empire, and you see Han being tortured, and when he's brought back to his cell, he says that he reveals that they didn't even ask him any questions. So when you hear that, you're like, whoa, the Empire didn't really take any shit in this film. They're just torturing people because reasons, which just makes them a whole lot more threatening. Now let's talk about Yoda, and he is great in this film. He said before, Yoda is my favourite Star Wars character. Well, I gotta admit though, at the beginning of the film, when we first introduced him, I kind of feel like he's a bit borderline Jar Jar Binks. I mean, he's nowhere near as bad as Jar Jar Binks, but when he's first introduced to Luke, I just thought, well, if I was on Dagobah, well, not me personally, but if someone was on a strange planet and then this weird little creature came to his camp, stole his food, stole his stuff, attacked his droid, I wouldn't be surprised to just boot him to the other side of the woods. And I just thought, come on Yoda, I know you're just messing around here, but you really have to be that much of a dickhead. Really. But when he is revealed to be Yoda, it's perfect. He goes from being the silly guy to very, like, not sullen, but very calm and majestic. And he's kind of like bickering with Obi-Wan whether he should train Luke because he's too old or not, which is kind of understandable because there's about 20 in this movie. But eventually he does train him, and the training that Luke has with Yoda is awesome. I love the bit where he's doing handstands and he's balancing Yoda on his foot, and there's different bunch of rocks up around him. And I remember when I was younger, I used to watch this film and I used to do handstands on my wall trying to replicate Luke's training, so that was pretty fun. And also, the puppetry for Yoda is some of the best puppeteering I've ever seen. He doesn't even look like a puppet in my opinion. He looks and feels like an actual living, breathing creature. But when you think about it, there's really just some guy pulling like strings on just a thing that they've created. it seems a bit weird because Yoda just seems so lifelike in this movie, and it's great, the different facial expressions he does, different hand gestures he does, it just feels so real, and I think they executed Yoda perfectly. And I remember George Lucas said he didn't really know how to execute this character because he knew what he had in mind for him, but he didn't know how they were going to put it on screen, and they did it in the best way possible, and could have not have made Yoda better in this whole movie, which kind of annoys me why they made him CGI in the prequel trilogy, because I know in episode 1 they did make him puppet, but that was awful. I just don't know why they didn't get this puppet back, and maybe make it look a bit more modern, but still I don't think CGI Yoda was necessary. I think they should have just kept this puppet, or at least a replica of this puppet, to make it look good, but I don't know, it's just because we're in the age of CGI, I guess. Dagobah just looks incredible in this movie. Dagobah is actually my favourite Star Wars planet, because I just think, like with everything else in the movie, it's just done so well. Like, they see the trees, the branches, the creatures, the mist. I just love everything about Dagobah. I think it's the perfect setting to introduce you to him. Hell, I've even got Dagobah as the lock screen on my phone. I don't know if you can see that very well, but that's Yoda sitting next to the Cave of Evil. So yeah, that's pretty cool. And also, while I'm on the topic of Cave of Evil, I just want to say this was a really cool scene in the movie, and a pivotal part in Luke's character arc, as if it shows that he's so hasty and he's not really ready to fight Vader, because before it ends, the Cave Yoda said, "Your weapons, you will not need them," but he just ignores him because he's arrogant right now, and he goes to the cave, he sees a vision of Darth Vader, and he lights his lightsaber straight away, which was his first mistake, because the Jedi shouldn't light his lightsaber first. And he kills like the imaginary Vader, and then his mask bursts open and he sees Luke's face, and I think Luke and the audience are just thinking, what does that mean? Is he... Well, it does turn out that he's Vader's son, but I don't really think that was a metaphor. I think the metaphor was, if he carries on the way he is going to turn out like Darth Vader, which is a really great metaphor. And when I first saw that scene, for the first time, it scared the crap out of me. So it was a really effective scene and one of my favourites in the whole film. And let's talk about the cinematography in this film, and oh my gosh, the cinematography in this film is amazing. There are so many great and iconic images from this film that I just love. Actually, I'm just going to show you a montage of my favourite images and cinematography from this film, because there's just too many to mention. So yeah, Irvin Kershner really did do a fantastic job with this film, especially in the cinematography department. Now, as well as reuniting us with familiar characters, Empire Strikes Back also gives us some great new ones. The highlight for me being Boba Fett. This guy is so awesome. In my opinion, he's probably up there with Yoda when it comes to the best Star Wars characters. And what I love about his character is that he doesn't say much. Like, he's not like that silent character who's just so badass. He doesn't need to speak. It's just his appearance is all he needs to say. He says like 3 lines in this whole movie, but he just oozes character. I don't know how he does it. I mean, his ship is badass, his weapons are badass, his armor's badass, his voice is badass. There's just everything about Boba Fett just screams badass, and he's definitely one of my favourite Star Wars characters of all time. I've even got a Boba Fett water bottle. And Boba Fett's not the only great character we're introduced to. We're also introduced to Lando Calrissian, and I love this guy. I love how in the first scene the first time we see him, he sees Han, he's best about with him, he's having banter with him, but as soon as he sees Leia, his attention is completely on her, and it just shows what kind of character he is. He's a player, he's a scoundrel, he's a lady killer, he's awesome. Also, one time I did this which Star Wars character are you test, and Alexander Calrissian, and I'm just like, yeah. And he just seems like such a friendly guy as well, so when you see that he betrays them, because Darth Vader got there first, it's actually quite a twist that no one really mentions. So I thought that was pretty clever, and by the end of the movie you're wondering, is he a good guy or a bad guy? In Return of the Jedi, it solidified that he is a good guy, but still, I just love his character. He's awesome. Not as good as Boba Fett, but he's still a great addition to the Star Wars saga. And another thing that kind of annoys me, though, is Lando's mistreatment in this film, because when he tries to free Chewie and Leia, they just like start choking him and being like, oh yeah, you had no choice. And I'm just like, of course he had no choice. Vader and the Imperials got there first. If he refused to comply, the whole of Cloud City would have been slaughtered. So it was kind of the lesser of two evils if you think about it. But yeah, I can understand Lady and Chewie's frustration. But like, when they started choking him and that, and just treating him like shit because they betrayed him, and like Han starts punching him and that, it just annoys me because it's not even his fault. He was forced to do that. Now let's talk about the thing in Empire Strikes that I want to talk about the most, and that's the visuals and action. The action in this movie is so intense and awesome. It might even be better than the first film, because we open with the Battle of Hoth, and that's one of the most epic and memorable fights in the whole saga. And The AT-ATs look absolutely incredible. One time I saw this behind the scenes thing where you see the AT-AT walkers, then you saw a guy run onto the set and then just makes it, oh wow, they're not even real, they're just like little figurines on a set. It's unbelievably good. The camera work on the AT-ATs just looks so lifelike, and it really came through with all that passion and effort that was poured into this film. And it's not just the Battle of Hoth either, we get the asteroid field sequence, and that's equally stunning. This film is literally practical effects at its best. Just think that these effects hold up today, and this was made in 1980. We just came out of the 70s, and we're already getting some of the greatest effects in movie history. Some of them even better than the ones we have in 2016, because nowadays all the movies are just filled with CGI and that, so it's really refreshing to see something like this. And after the incredible asteroid field sequence, we get the scene where Han and Leia land into a cave, but it turns out they're actually in the belly of a creature, so they escape. I love this scene because it's just so clever and original. It's not even necessary. They could have just landed in a cave, waited till the Imperials left, and then flew away. But no, they decided to add a space slug in there. Well, it's actually called an exogulf, but no one cares. And it's just little things like that that make this movie so great. And of course, who could forget the epic confrontation between Luke and Darth Vader, and it still holds up in my opinion as the best lightsaber duel we've had, even in The Force Awakens. Mainly because, well, a big reason for that is the setting. It's amazing. The blue mist, the orange light, you see Darth Vader completely shrouded in shadow, everything, it just oozes atmosphere, and it's incredible. And I just love the way how Vader doesn't even flinch when Luke gets his lightsaber out. And I'm always wondering what Vader was thinking when Luke struck his lightsaber. He must have been thinking something like, oh god, what's it doing? He wants to fight me. Alright, I'll humour him, but if he steps out of line, I'm going to beat the shit out of him. And that's exactly what happens. And in this fight, you can tell that Vader's kind of holding him back because he's more interested in talking to Luke than fighting him. But as soon as Luke gets a bit of a handful, Darth Vader absolutely annihilates him. He chops off his hand, and of course he reveals that he's his father, which in my opinion is one of the greatest twists of all time. But it does kind of contradict some stuff that happened in the previous movie. An example that springs to mind is in the first movie when Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen are talking about Anakin, and they said, and Aunt Beru's like, oh, you know, Luke, he's too much like his father. But she didn't say it in a way that implied that he was evil. She just implied that, yeah, maybe he was a bit impulsive and hasty. And then Uncle Owen's like, yeah, that's what I'm afraid of. But I know it's kind of a nitpick, but I just think if people are talking about his dad like he was an evil Sith Lord, I just don't think they'd be talking like in that friendly way. I think they'd be all like, yeah, he's got a bit much of his father in him. Not, oh, you know him, he's got too much of his father in him. You know, the evil kid slaughtering Sith Lord's got too much of that in him. I just don't think they'd be like that. Or maybe they didn't know he was an evil Sith Lord, maybe they just knew that he went a bit off the rails. Like, if you saw Belated Media's What If Episode 3 were good, it kind of implies that they didn't really know he was Darth Vader, but they must have found out sometime. So yeah, no one really talks about that, but, that's just my opinion. And also, another thing that kind of does get talked about a lot is that why didn't Obi-Wan tell Luke that Darth Vader was his father? Because Yoda and Obi-Wan were so insistent on Luke not going to face Vader, and I think if Obi-Wan said to Luke, you can't face him, he's your father, maybe with a bit more subtlety, then Luke would have been like, okay, I can't kill my father, I won't do it. So why didn't everyone just do that? Well, yeah, it was a major shocker for Luke and the audience. So in the end it leaves Luke physically and emotionally scarred from this intense confrontation. And also, another thing that's kind of funny, when I was younger, I used to watch the Toy Story trilogy quite a lot, and I love them. So in Toy Story 2, the reveal that Zurg was Buzz's father, I didn't know that was ripping off Star Wars at all. I didn't even know Star Wars existed at the time. So when I found out that was written Star Wars, I actually used to think that it was ripped off Toy Story 2, and I thought that for quite a while. But yeah, I was about like 6 at the time, but still, I just thought that was pretty funny to look back on. And of course, we also get the scene where we see Lando, Chewie and Leia chase after Boba Fett and run away from the Stormtroopers. I just love the scene here where you see Lando pull Leia away from the Stormtroopers, because I'm just like, yes, that's when you know you've got a strong female character. Not where your female character is capable of impossible feats, is perfect at everything, and have the movie constantly tell you she's a strong female character. Ray! So, Luke gets a new hand, they look off into a galaxy within a galaxy, alright, and then our movie is over. And it leaves us on such a big cliffhanger which leaves us gagging for more. Which is actually a reason why this movie actually got only fair reviews back in the day. Like I saw this thing on Rotten Tomatoes where it compared all the Star Wars movies to the reviews they got in the day, and this for this movie, only about 60% of critics liked it, and a big complaint is that it didn't tie up any loose ends. It just leaves on such a big cliffhanger. It leaves with so many questions, like, is Darth Vader really Luke's father? Will Han escape from Carbonite? Which I think is kind of stupid, because like, there's going to be a next one which will tie up all loose ends. I don't know why this movie got such bad critical reviews for that. But anyway, when Return of the Jedi came out, the hate went down a lot, and now it's considered one of the greatest movies of all time. So it turned out pretty well. For example, I was marathoning these movies before Force Awakens with my grandparents, and we were watching one Star Wars movie a month. Then we watched The Empire Strikes Back. And we said time for another film, and I was like, hey, what do you want next? And then it was like, it's got to be Return of the Jedi. I've got to watch Return of the Jedi. And I'm like, yeah, I really do want to watch Return of the Jedi, but you know, it's one a month. And it was even killing me not to watch the next one, even though I've seen these movies a gazillion times before. I was just gagging to watch Return of the Jedi just so I can watch it all over again. So it's a pretty big impact that this movie has. So, The Empire Strikes Back. It's fantastic. And a lot of that is attributed to how dark it is. I mean, this movie's called Empire Strikes Back for a reason, and they strike back hard. It's like Jeremy Jones said, you blow up a Death Star, we're going to blow up your mind. And that's exactly what this movie did. Like I said before, the characters got into their roles much more in this film, so it makes their characters more believable and you have more connection with them, which was really good. It introduced some great new characters. And of course it's the best Star Wars movie. It's one of the greatest movies of all time, like I've already said. And it is one of my favourite movies of all time. So yeah, in my opinion, it is impossible to argue it's the best Star Wars movie or not. I don't think any other Star Wars movie even comes close to how great this movie is. I think A New Hope comes pretty close, but the rest of the Star Wars movies, nah, they don't even come close. But the other Star Wars movies are really enjoyable, but Empire Strikes Back is just up there with the greats. And what's interesting about that is that even though everyone considers Empire Strikes Back to be the best Star Wars movie, George Lucas said it was his least favourite. Now, I don't know if he's talking about the least favourite in the original trilogy, because if it is, then well, yeah, we all have our opinions. But if he's talking about the worst film in the whole saga, then that is just ridiculous. And there is some circulation, which I believe is that George Lucas only said that because of jealousy, because Empire Strikes Back was the film he had least to do with. And now I know you can't really take this claim too seriously, as for all we know it could have been said in jest, because I've looked for interviews on the internet of George Lucas saying that Empire Strikes Back is his worst film and why, but I can't find anywhere, but I have heard that he has said that. And it won't surprise me at all, because what's always been apparent to me, even before I heard that George Lucas said that Empire Strikes Back was his least favourite, was that Empire Strikes Back was always marketed as the worst, in my opinion. Like, there's several times where I was looking at like the Star Wars movies as a whole, and the Empire Strikes Back always seemed the least appealing, even though it was obvious to me that it was the best. Like, for example, those new Steelbook covers. On all of those front covers, they all look awesome. On Phantom Menace, you got Darth Maul, Revenge of the Sith, the General Grievous, A New Hope, Darth Vader, Return of the Jedi, a cool detailed picture of the Emperor. But for the Empire Strikes Back, we've just got some Stormtrooper. It don't even look cool or detailed. It just looks boring. And on the Blu-ray disc, on the dish, they've all got something cool on them. Like even on Attack of the Clones, you got Count Dooku doing some Force lightning, which is awesome. And on A New Hope, you got Ben Kenobi. But on Empire Strikes Back, you got Chewbacca. And it's very misleading because Chewbacca, he didn't even have anything to do with the series. They should have had Boba Fett on there. I mean, Chewbacca did have something to do with the series, obviously, but he wasn't a pivotal part of the movie at all, like the rest were. And even back to when it was first released with the theatrical poster. Now, I've got this Empire Strikes Back canvas, and I love it, but it is my least favourite canvas out of the three, because it just seems the least appealing. I mean, on here, you got you got Luke Skywalker on a Tauntaun, and the main point is just Han and Leia. But they could have shown so much more in this poster. You could have shown Dagobah, you could have shown Yoda, you could have seen Darth Vader with a lightsaber, you could have seen Luke Skywalker doing training, or get his lightsaber out. Like, no one cares about Luke on the Tauntaun. I don't think many people really cared that much about the love story between Luke and Leia. You could have shown a big picture of Boba Fett on there, but he's only got a tiny bit there. So, maybe I'm just going too far, but in my opinion, I think that George Lucas is intentionally trying to make Empire Strikes Back the least appealing of the Star Wars saga, so he can make people think that it is the worst, just like him. Okay, maybe I'm just being silly, maybe I'm completely wrong, but with the way George Lucas has marketed Empire Strikes Back over the years, it didn't surprise me at all, really, when he said that Empire Strikes Back was his least favourite. Hell, it even says on the box it's one of the greatest movies of all time, so like the first movie, it's very self-aware of how good it is. It's a bit insulting that this movie and A New Hope are neck and neck on Rotten Tomatoes, because they've both got 94%. And don't get me wrong, I love A New Hope, you know I do. If you saw my if you saw my review for the original Star Wars. But I think everyone can agree that The Empire Strikes Back just took everything about New Hope and just took it to a new level. So I think it should have got a few more Rotten Tomatoes than A New Hope, but still, it's just a little thing really, it doesn't affect the movie at all. So yeah, that was my review for The Empire Strikes Back. Next short I'll be in Return of the Jedi, and soon Force Awakens will be out on Blu-Ray, so if you're excited for that, put a like on this video, tell me in the comments, and I'll see you next time for my review for Return of the Jedi. So I'll see you next time. Also, before we go, I just want to say I got this Darth Vader candy dispenser from the shop the other day. It's not dispensing any candy for some reason, but it just made that awesome breathing noise. My life is so fulfilling.